Hello everybody, I hope you're well. I'm Callum and I run Repair Wins, which is an electronics repair business, and in today's video I managed to successfully modify a Lenovo ThinkCentre desktop to take an Intel Xeon. And back in the day that wouldn't have been a statement that anyone would have been proud to make, because all it meant was taking a CPU out, putting the Xeon in, switching it on, job done. But with the 6th generation of processors, Intel decided to make it so that the Xeons wouldn't work. Unless you had a nice expensive server chipset, mucho dinero. But what happens when you're a person like me who doesn't have mucho dinero? What happens, all joking aside, when I just want to take an £8 Intel Xeon, which besides not having graphics built in is exactly the same as an i7, which costs £35, and put it in my desktop? Well, what you get is a single beep, fan goes loud, computer switches off, it switches back on, single beep, fan goes loud, it switches off. And so you have to dismantle the entire machine, remove the BIOS chip, make a modification to it, solder it back, and then miraculously, this CPU, which is chipset incompatible, just works. And once you know what you're doing, once you've seen the process, it's not even difficult. You know, I was quite surprised that it worked, and it was actually as simple as it was. I mean, obviously to a person without the tools, it's probably not a first project that I'd recommend, but the point is, I managed to take a CPU that only cost me £8 and use it in place of one that cost £35, and if everyone was able to do that, we'd all save a lot of money. So stay tuned, I suppose, and I'll show you how to make an Intel Xeon work in Lenovo ThinkCentre and similar computers. You can see then that I have a ThinkCentre M800. It's running the latest BIOS, version 1.BF from mid-2022. And if I go to the system summary, you can see it has an i5 6th generation and 8 gigs of RAM. Now, as a bonus, that's 2 sticks of 4, but there's 2 more slots that are free on the motherboard, meaning I can just drop 2 more 4GB sticks in there for a total of 16 gigs of RAM, and it'll be really cheap. There are obviously more professional ways of doing this, but I'm on a time crunch, so this is the way that I'm going to do it. This is the BIOS chip here. I'm going to heat it up to 480 degrees with some hot air. I'm going to hold onto it with these tweezers and I'm going to remove it from the board. When it's removed from the board, I'm going to stick it in this programmer and then we can go from there. So I'll just get the hot air. It's set to its maximum temperature of 480. I've got the airflow set to half, and I'm pretty much, just because I'm right-handed, it's easier to use my right hand. So I'm going to wiggle back and forth really quickly. Because if you go back and forth quickly, you've got less chance of melting the plastic. And then I'll be able to remove this thing from the board in no time. There we are then, that's the chip removed. I had to apply the heat for a little bit longer than I wanted to. But you can see that I moved the air around at the start to warm the board up a bit. And then I put a much smaller nozzle on there. And to be honest, I've gotten away without melting any plastic whatsoever. So I'm pretty pleased with that. This chip is now removed. I'm just going to set it down here. We'll let it cool for a bit and then I can put it in the programmer. I have a tool called XG Pro running on this laptop, and connected to the laptop is a programmer. So if I go into the tool and I click auto and then I hit detect, with any luck it'll bring up the chip. I just typically choose a top option and then I'm going to hit select. If there's loads in a list anyway, I'll choose a top option. If there's 1 or 2, I'll try and confirm I have the exact chip. But I'm going to hit read and then I'm going to hit read again. It took quite a few goes because this is a really cheap rubbish adapter, but I've managed to get it to work, so it's now reading the BIOS chip. When it's read, I'm going to save it to a file. I'm then going to back that file up and we will use the backed up version. Pretty much we need to modify the BIOS and then change one of the options within there that you don't have access to normally, and then when we change that option, with any luck it should boot with the Xeon installed. You can see that the read is finished, so I'm going to hit back and then I'm going to hit save. And there you are, there is the file. So now I can pretty much put that on a USB drive, back it up, and I'll take it to the main computer. I ended up taking 2 BIOS dumps and making sure they match, which they do. I've booted into Windows because I need to use a Windows specific tool. So it's called Flash Image Tool, it's by Intel. I went into that folder, I opened the program, you can see it here. I hit File, I hit Open, I chose one of the BIOS files that I had from earlier, and this tool is going to allow me to modify that file so I can make the Xeon boot. According to the guide I found, I need to go to Intel ME kernel, which is a selected option. I've just done that. And then I scroll all the way to the bottom. There's a setting called reserved. The current value is no. I need to change it to yes. So apparently all I have to do is change it to say yes, and then Control B on my keyboard to build the image. So I'm going to hit yes, and instantaneously it failed to build because it couldn't find a historic value. I don't know what that means. I'm going to have to do some digging. I got the image to flash. As you can see, it's written it to a folder on my computer. So what I had to do was go here to flash settings and then scroll down to VSCC entries. There were 8 values here originally. There's only 7 now. Pretty much one of them was erroneous or one of them was incompatible or something along those lines. So I pretty much just deleted it. And when I deleted that, the image built. I can't really go into any more detail because, to be honest, I just followed what I saw online. But either way, I have now gotten it to write me out an image, and you can see it right there. So I'm going to put the image on the USB drive, take it back to the computer, and then try and flash it. You can see the run light on the programmer is lit. That's a good sign. I've told the tool to erase the chip, and then when it's erased the chip, it's going to write the file that we've just created to it. When the file is being created, I'll solder the chip to the board. We'll boot it with the i5. If it boots up okay with the i5, we'll remove the i5, put the Xeon in, cross our fingers tightly that it all just works. It's time to resolder the chip. Off camera, I've applied low melt solder to the pads. That's going to lower the melting temperature of the solder quite a lot, which means I don't have to subject the board to so much heat for such a long time. So I'm just going to warm the area up, and then I'm going to place the chip on the top, heat that up for a little bit, and then it will be stuck in place. I'm actually quite surprised. I've managed to drop the chip on and it's just landed in perfectly the right spot. That doesn't normally happen. Absolute worst case, I'll just hold it in place and use a soldering iron. I'd just rather not do that if I can avoid it. Just means more work. Oh, there we go. That's actually melting now. I'm going to give that sort of 5 more seconds. Shift to this side, 5 more seconds. Happy with that. And the best news is that I've not even melted any of the plastic. Obviously I can only do so well to record with the limited equipment I have at my disposal. I am working on improved lighting, but there you go. You can see that that chip is soldered down in place. I'm just going to get a cotton bud and clean some of the flux away. I'll do that off camera and then we'll boot the machine up. I've removed the CMOS battery, or that little coin cell battery there. That resets the BIOS, which is something that you need to do before powering up for the first time. And it might switch itself on, it might not. It hasn't in this case. I'm just going to press the power button. Right, it turned on, and has that instantly turned itself off? Switched on and straight back off. Oh no, this isn't a good sign, is it? This is the reason why you make backups. It turns out that I've installed the chip the wrong way round. I'm just going to reverse that and cross my fingers I haven't broken it. I'm afraid this one's a little bit anticlimactic. If I bring it up here, you can see it switched on. I switched it on, I thought it had failed. It turns out the monitor was just stuck in HDMI mode, that's all it was. I switched it back to VGA and it worked, so I got very lucky here. I haven't damaged the BIOS chip, although chances are half the pins weren't soldered. Either way though, I flipped the chip around and it is now working, so we can officially switch the machine off, which I'm just going to do now. And now that it's off, we can remove the CPU cooler, put the Xeon in there, and then give it a real test. I think I said it earlier, but I'm not happy with the quality of the lighting here. Now, it's way better than it was when I created the first video, but either way, I'm working on something to improve the lighting, so fingers crossed after the next few videos it should be a lot better, if anyone even cares. Anyway, let's get this CPU cooler removed. So I'm just going to unplug the CPU fan. I already removed the system fan. And don't just pull straight up on it. Twist the cooler left to right to break the bond. And then when you have, you can then pull up, although I think one of these is still a bit stuck. Oh gosh, at some point you do just have to, hoik up on it. It looks like the thermal paste was done very recently on this machine, so that was a bit of a waste of time. I was just about to open the latch and remove it, but I think I'll just use this cotton bud to absorb most of the paste that's on this CPU, because that way it's not going to end up going on my fingers and stuff. I'm not looking to do a perfect job here. I can clean it properly later. That's alright then, so now I can just push into here, move this catch over to the side, move that backwards, and then you can grab the CPU at the front and unplug it. And this is kind of what I mean about getting thermal paste on your fingers. And in here we have our Intel Xeon E3-1230 V5. I'm going to redo the thermal paste, so I'd best just get another cotton bud and just clean the rubbish that's on here off. The processor is clean, the heatsink is also clean, or at least it's as clean as you can realistically get these things. I'm running out of this stuff, but Going to use some Arctic MX4 thermal compound. I know that not everyone likes this stuff, but you can get a big tube of it for about £20, and trust me, it's a lot better than the rubbish that you buy for a couple of pounds. So let's cap this. That's a pea-sized amount in the middle, which is generally recommended. Make sure you put the cooler back on the same way. It doesn't actually matter because it's a square, but you know, you don't want to be straining the life out of the cable. So I'll plug the connector in at the end. I'm just going to hold down here. Going to start this screw off. Then I'll do the second one, and once the two of those are started off, you can start your third one, and then finish with the fourth one. Go back to the third, back to the second, and then back to the first. They're all tightened down. Plug the CPU header back in. There we are. The original BIOS battery is at 2.5 volts, which is no good. So I'm going to get that, I'm going to get rid of it. I've got a replacement BIOS battery here, which hopefully is a bit closer to 3 volts. And there we are, 3.063. That's good enough for me. So I'm just going to get it and put it into the holder. One of the big differences between the Xeon that I've installed and an i7 is that the i7 has graphics built in and the Xeon doesn't, meaning I'll need to install a GPU in this slot. And that's not a problem, except I don't have any GPUs. So it's going to be very quick for you, but for me, that means I have to wait a few days until I'm next at the non-profit, when I can actually install the graphics card and then see if this thing works. This computer is designed to replace an older computer that we already have in use. The thing is, the old computer has a 2.5-inch SATA SSD installed, and there's nowhere in this case for me to install a 2.5-inch SATA drive. So here's the original 3.5-inch hard drive holder, and you can see there's no provisions for a 2.5-inch disk. So I've got this 3D model. I'm going to send it to my 3D printer, and the idea is it's got 1, 2, 3, 4 holes where the original hard drive would mount, and then another 4 holes that I can screw the SSD into. Moment of truth, I've installed only the finest GT 710 graphics card, VGA, straight into the monitor. Push the power button, and we'll see if the thing wants to come to life. Ah, there we go. The Novo logo, that means it's working with the Xeon.
Brilliant.
Yeah, imagine that. Intel said it wasn't possible, Lenovo said it wasn't possible, chipset limitations, CPU generation, whatever it is, there's your proof that they're lying to you. The only reason why it's not possible is corporate greed. Oh good, Windows 11's installed. Talking about corporate greed, look, Windows 11. There you go. In case there was any doubt, there's the machine, ThinkCentre M800, same BIOS version and date. We go to System Summary, Xeon E3-1230V5, and I've even upgraded the RAM. Furthermore, the SSD is being detected. So if I go to Startup and we'll make it legacy only, the reason for that is that this SSD has been in quite a few boxes, and one of them was legacy only. We'll just hit enter, and then with any luck this thing will boot into Linux. I thought I would record a voiceover as opposed to a traditional outro for this video, and the reason for that is there's a few things I want to clarify. So you could see in the final clip there that Linux is obviously running on the machine. I didn't think it was worth making you spend 30 seconds watching the operating system boot up, so I just cut that little bit out. But also, it's a computer used by 2 businesses. I didn't want to name the other business, and I don't want to show people's full names, because they have a right to privacy. Hence I just showed my first name on the login screen, because that's obviously something that you all already know. As for the question David asked me earlier, at around 11 minutes, you might have struggled to hear it because I spoke over him, but he was asking me, what is it that actually stops these Xeons from working by default? And as I alluded to, well, it's corporate greed basically. I mean, that's pretty much it. In effect, I might not go on the record and say this, but as far as I'm concerned, Intel are pretty much lying to you, because for you to be able to buy a Xeon and drop it in your computer instead of buy a much more expensive i7 and drop it in your computer is bad for business. I think it's as simple as that. They'll tell you it's a chipset issue or it's another limitation or whatever, but if that's the case, then tell me why changing one little setting like I did is all that I had to do to make the Xeon work. I mean, furthermore, there's a mod called Coffee Time where you can potentially put a 9th generation CPU in a 5th generation motherboard. That's well out of the scope of this video and probably out of my skill set, but the point is we're just being lied to. It's planned obsolescence, plain and simple as far as I'm concerned. I suppose on a brighter note though, in order to combat all of this stuff, you might have seen on screen the photo of the SSD and its nice holder. That's my design. It's obviously something I 3D printed, as I said I would earlier, and I'm giving it away for free. So if you just go to a link in the description, you can go to printables, and then obviously that model is there. It lets you put an SSD where you would typically put a 3.5-inch hard drive. Otherwise, you can see the 4GB sticks of RAM. That's a great way to do an upgrade at the moment. If you're currently at 8 gigs of RAM, just buy 2 more 4GB sticks if your motherboard has the provisions for it, because 8GB sticks of RAM cost silly amounts of money. And then the last thing to point out is just the graphics card. And if you're eagle-eyed, you might have noticed there's no bracket. That's because it originally had a full height bracket, and I don't have a half height bracket spare. And given the computer has technically only cost us £8, because that's what I spent on the Xeon, I'm not about to go out and spend another £8 on a bracket. I know from experience it'll be absolutely fine. You know, the graphics card's going to get plugged in to a display, and then it's going to stay in one spot. It's not like it's going to be sat there and constantly getting jostled around and moved and stuff. I mean, furthermore, the computer's lying flat on the desk, so it really doesn't need a bracket. If I was selling it to a customer, or you know, if it were a perfect world, I'd add a bracket, but it doesn't need one. That's all I've got for you today then, anyway. I hope you did like the video. I hope you found something useful, you know, or maybe if it's not a mod you're going to do yourself, I hope it gave you some inspiration for something that you are going to do yourself, whatever that may be. If you did enjoy the video, then feel free to hit subscribe. I've got quite a lot of projects on the go at the moment. I did have a little bit of a rut where I recorded some stuff and ended up deleting it because I wasn't pleased with the quality, or I realised it was just something that I'd rushed through just to say I got a video uploaded. I would rather take 3 weeks to upload and upload something that I think is decent, than basically upload something once a week just for the sake of doing it. Hence why the videos have been a bit more sporadic recently. Not that I think anyone's really noticed, you know. Seriously though, I do hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you'll stick around and perhaps watch whatever it is I upload next. Either way, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Take care for now, and goodbye.